welcome back. This is Kotlin Conversations, where we're having conversations with just a few of the many wonderful speakers and guests here at KotlinConf 2024. I'm Quinn Twit Dow, and I'm speaking with
Meike.
Hi, Meike. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, well, I know, Meike, you worked really hard on your talk today. I think you just gave it very recently,
Yeah.
so I'm borrowing what's left of
Still
Meike's.
exhausted.
I'm borrowing what's left of Meike's energy to talk to her today. Like, Meike, so what do you do, and how did you first get started with Kotlin?
Actually, a long time ago, I'm like doing mobile software engineering since more than 10 years. I think like
Amazing.
nearly reaching 15 years soon.
Oh,
Started
brilliant.
actually with iOS, but then made my road to more like having that open source spirit and going to the Android side.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had like back then some like when Kotlin came out, I was like desperately wanting to try it out because I wanted to get rid of writing public static string args, whatever,
Yes, very
all
much
the
so.
boilerplate stuff I need to remember.
Yeah.
And so I thought like, yeah, team, let's do Kotlin. But they were like, oh no, we are too afraid, not sure. We all know
Yeah.
Java so well, and we don't want to must have learned something new. And I was like, okay, no, it sounds so awesome. Please let us adapt early, because with iOS, I was also like a very early adapter. And I think like 2009, I started like right away when the beginning came.
Yeah.
And then we invited some experts to our company to, like my team manager was supporting me with the thought of trying out Kotlin, but we had to bring the team on the side, so you cannot force it to use some technology.
Right. Yeah.
And then we invited some other experts who introduced it already to their company, but my team was still afraid to use it.
Yeah.
So I actually decided I go with the experts and just switch the company.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
because I wanted to use Kotlin so desperately.
Mhm.
But funnily, after half year doing Kotlin in that company, I was then moved to like the Xamarin Multiplatform universum, because there was some business needs to save money, and also I'm working in a lot of enterprise projects, and if like the company doing the project and has a lot of C# developers, totally makes sense for them to use Xamarin, which is now, I think it's called Maui.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
they changed the name.
Yeah. I was in kind of that world. So I had some, like, not a little bit similar experiences to you. Like, I also did iOS for a bit as well. And
Yeah.
I switched back. I think I always was meant to work in Android. I started Android, but at the time there weren't a lot of iOS jobs. So I went back and forth.
Yeah.
But similarly, like I was in a lot of similar positions where I was in enterprise, and even though, and I kept trying to make them like, oh, we should do an Android. I was like, well, how about we do Xamarin and we get both? Because again, it's like always about costs and resourcing.
Yes.
So, but I did not know it changed its whole name. But yeah, for me, it didn't feel like a good solution, because I think, not there's anything wrong with Xamarin, but it just didn't feel like what I wanted to do or how I wanted to do mobile. Did you feel similar?
I thought like the source code is screaming at me with all the caps, chars there, and if you're not used to it, and if it's not like your comfort zone, you probably have to just always as a developer try to get there where you want to be, because otherwise people are pushing you to the place where you don't want to be.
No, yeah.
So,
That's a really great point. And I think that's part of our jobs, is to push back when the technology doesn't quite fit.
Yeah.
And I had a similar experience. I also did C# for quite a while. I didn't mind it at the time, but it was, again, like I liked other things.
Yeah.
So yeah, no. But you said that wasn't the first time that you kind of got pushed away from.
Yeah, there
from
were
your
like
first job,
following
yeah.
times also. Like then I came back again to do some Kotlin background, how to say, some other middleware stuff and so on, in
Yeah.
combination with dialog flow and chatbots. And I had fun there just playing with Kotlin server stuff and
Yeah.
Quarkus and so on.
Oh, wow.
But then again, Flutter came around the corner, and they said, "Oh, it's better for us to get all the platforms at once. Let's
Yeah.
use." This time it was then Flutter,
Mhm.
and of course, Dart is also a language.
Yeah, it's a different language. Yeah.
But and the declarative part of describing the UIs is quite similar to Swift UI and also to Jetpack Compose. So Flutter is like, I liked it more than Xamarin, but it was still not Kotlin. So I was still trying to go back to the language. So with my experience with iOS also, I was like always seen as a perfect candidate for doing
Right.
multi-platform things.
Yeah.
So you have
Exactly.
to
Absolutely. Yeah.
then say, no, actually, I want to be an Android engineer. Please leave me at least with the Kotlin language. Even I can do some backend stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
please leave me the freedom to do just that language and dig
Mm-hmm.
deeper into it and not switch technologies like too often.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It is hard when you switch often though, because then you kind of have to relearn. Like even if you have become like an expert in it, just context switching is just it's
yeah,
just very
I mean, they
mm,
say
yeah detrimental to flow.
I think they say that you can, if you're a good engineer, you can learn a new language in 4 weeks. But anyways, if you want to dig deeper,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. No, no, that's a good point. You can learn it in 4 weeks, but like obviously you probably just really wanted to stick with and really get into Kotlin as well.
yeah.
So
And I also like participated in the Road to GDE program, for example. And
yeah,
there I
yeah,
learned like if you want to become a GDE, you have to have focus on one specific topic. You cannot widen your knowledge too much.
yeah.
And so I thought, okay, my favorite topic would be like Jetpack Compose. How can I
Mm-hmm,
continue that?
mm-hmm,
And I then had the opportunity to work for Adesso Mobile Solutions, and they offered me a job like having the Android guild lead role.
oh
And I'm
wow,
also
yeah, yeah.
like facilitating things like
Mm-hmm,
knowledge exchange and stuff like that. So
mm-hmm.
my work since 3 years is now only Android, only Kotlin. Yay!
Finally.
Yes. And even with multi-platform, I can now say, okay, I can do iOS and desktop too, still using Kotlin, and that's so nice. And with a job as a like an Android guild lead, there I'm like doing, I don't know, monthly breakfasts where we exchange knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and also like this year we're doing a stand at the DroidCon in Berlin
Oh, brilliant.
also.
Yeah.
Yeah, to just keep the Kotlin and Android vibes going.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I know I think we probably started mobile. I think you were a little bit earlier in mobile than me then, but I think we both have similar, experiences where, companies really just want to understandably save money and get, the whole right once run everywhere is just a promise that has been around for many years.
Yeah,
And it seems like a very admirable thing for it's you can understand why a company would want that because it saves them money, saves them resources,
yeah,
but I think over the years, seeing, I mean, and not to talk, like insult, like platforms like Xamarin or Flutter even too much. I never really found that they stuck with me or that they worked out. Like I don't know. I feel like a lot of times things didn't quite work out for whatever reason. Maybe
yeah.
they
Like
they just weren't the best. Like
they're like missing developer joy. I was missing that
yeah,
a little bit.
missing developer joy and maybe just like yeah something about it. So did you find your joy with Kotlin
Yeah,
Multiplatform?
definitely. I'm also like planning to rewrite my website of that personally with the Kotlin multi-platform, and also like to see what the alpha versions are they going to, and
Mm-hmm.
what we are going to have when iOS is also like productive, but even you can use it now in an alpha state, I think, nearly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. So you have some iOS experience. Can you comment on how well do you think KMP covers the iOS side of development? Like, do you think it's like I know it's not going to be as the same as doing native iOS development,
Yeah.
but do you think it's still very a good way of do you think it's a good way of doing iOS apps?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could, of course, write it natively with a Swift UI, and if you need many platform-specific stuffs, I don't know if I'm always getting shocked when I have to do some Bluetooth stuff on the Android stack, or
Yeah,
I don't know how it is on the
yeah,
iOS stack. And
yeah.
probably there's like if you have too much complicated things, you surely have to write platform-specific code.
Hmm.
But I would feel comfortable writing that in Kotlin too, and a little bit, yeah. My s- iOS knowledge is like mainly back from Objective C more. I did do a little Swift UI, but not
Yeah.
too much, so would have to learn something there if it's necessary.
That actually, I'm very similar in that way too, because the last time I did iOS, it was right before Swift came out, and then
Yeah,
I switched back to Android, and so I basically
yeah,
missed
that was
Swift.
same timing for me.
Yeah, and I feel like I would have loved it because I know I love Kotlin as well, so maybe I would have like really liked doing it, but I still have it's mostly an Objective C brain. Whatever my iOS is mostly in
Yep.
Objective C. So I think that's really funny. What is your favorite part about the KMP process? Like, or what is your favorite maybe technical challenge or thing? What is it that you love about KMP? especially?
Actually, like that I can use like Compose for UIs and play around with my modifiers like I do it normally for Jetpack Compose, and then it just works on the other platforms, and I'm like, okay, easy, I've got that too.
And that's what your talk about today was on, right? Kind of
Yeah.
like modifiers, which are, by the way, one of my favorite things in Jetpack Compose. Just the whole like structure of the API and how we like it's so
Yeah.
composable. Did you find like so you were talking about advanced like sorry if I'm trying to remember the name of your talk correctly, like
Very long
modif
title.
advanced modifiers
Yeah.
for multi-platform. What was like I guess your most interesting learning when doing kind of like more advanced work with modifiers on KMP?
Yeah, you can do a lot of custom stuff with draw behind and things like that. But you have to watch out for performance issues probably on that. But that's like streamlined generally over all platforms and not then
Really?
so specific to iOS or watch out for
Yeah.
Android. Yeah, besides that, I was like just realizing some minor differences. If you have a clickable modifier,
Mm-hmm.
the focus behavior can be like a slight difference on the desktop version for me. There
Oh,
was like
really?
if you have a half cut item in a like a column row or something, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
you click it, then the desktop version would scroll it in a bit. And you have to apply an additional modifier to prevent that. That is not focusable or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh, interesting.
But like these are just minor tweaks you probably would overlook, but if you get experience over time, you know how to do that. Also for me, desktop development is new for me. I just realized, oh, probably I could add shortcuts and that the user can add other input options than it would have on the mobile first world, because
So make it more tuned to desktop, and then
yeah.
you wouldn't have to maybe do some of the kind of fixes or something because then it's like a little bit different. Is that how it would be?
Yeah, I mean, on desktop, you also have other expectations that the app should be
That's true.
capable of accepting shortcuts for some stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's very common on this. But hey, so now you're a desktop developer as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just find that fascinating because I think the concern, I think sometimes with KMP, and I know with some other like multi-platform solutions, is that while there is a lot of shared code, you end up having to need native expertise because each platform has its own like complications or things like that. So it feels like the shared part is nice, but then you still end up needing a lot of very specific knowledge anyway. But it sounds like with KMP, a lot of it is relatively
Well handled
working
already. Yeah,
already.
I think. I mean, it's always good to know what the user expectations are on each platform. If you
Hmm.
do not really know how a iOS user thinks, you probably disappoint him if you just show him the Material 3 stuff
Hmm.
and they're used to other UI principles.
Hmm.
But if it's just leading like to the, for example, back navigation principle of
Yeah, yeah.
that platform,
Hmm.
and they have the expectations, then every user should be happy, and we can easily accomplish that with multi-platform.
Is that something that you're actively like having to keep up with, like the iOS like user experience, and then trying to make sure that you bring that in? Like, do you do a lot of research, or is that just like, yeah,
I think always would at the end let it check a real iOS user, because
yeah,
I'm like
yeah.
all the time also mainly using my Android device. I would
Hmm.
overlook stuff easily.
Hmm.
So I would say I can prepare the app to 80%, but then let some iOS expert check if he also thinks that's fitting perfect here.
No, but I think that's kind of like the responsibility, right? Like we get to have our fun and have KMP and have Kotlin, but
Yeah.
we need to still respect the user's needs. So I think it's brilliant actually having someone kind of check out your work is like, oh, okay, how is this for an iOS user? In terms of like how you structure it, like so sometimes you probably do need to make like some tweaks so that again to make it an iOS appropriate experience, but you still use like the modifier system to kind of like encapsulate that behavior, or like how do you tend to like keep that code clean? Because that's what I wonder about. Because even in Android, when we have like a little bit of fragmentation, it's always like, oh, if this version or else that version, it gets a little bit messy at times. How
Yeah.
do you deal with that kind of like you know the the split in behaviors? Like what's your best practice for that?
Oh, good question. I mean, of course, mainly actual and aspect helps us to do platform specific stuff and don't load it into if else
Hmm. Yeah,
structures.
yeah, yeah.
so that's very nice already.
Mhm.
On the other side, actually, I didn't have the case yet that I would have to make very
Oh, okay,
distinct
well then,
versions.
yeah. So
Just
well
like
then you don't have to. So that's brilliant. Yeah. So
mainly
that's
UI focused
yeah,
playing apps right now. Yeah.
brilliant. Yeah. So you're happy with KMP. You're working with Kotlin. Do you have any advice to people that might be still like so for myself? I think I was still very skeptical about multi-platform for a long time.
Yeah.
But seeing you and other people get excited about KMP has started to change my mind. But if someone came up to you and said, "Hey, Meike, I'm still not sure about KMP," what would you say to them to convince them that they should try it?
Probably that the JetBrains toolbox is also done with KMP. I heard
Oh,
that,
really?
and
I did not know that.
I think it's like that. I'm not so sure, but
Okay, okay,
I heard
okay.
it. I think everyone should love the JetBrains toolbox because it's such a convenient way
Hmm.
to install software, and it's like for me always a motivation to think like, yeah, just do things, and you easily get it on other platform, or at least
Yeah.
if you start an Android project, start it as an multi-platform project, and you're free to extend it later on,
Hmm.
and just be there open-minded. It is just faster accomplishing your goal to handle also other platforms.
And you get to
And
stay in Kotlin.
yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so nice,
Beautiful.
and always get quite fast also the adaptations to what happens in the native Jetpack Compose world from Android.
Hmm.
I mean, it's like adapted very fast,
Well,
so have
brilliant.
no
Yeah,
problem
and you
there.
get to use Compose, which is one of my favorite things. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I even realized there are some modifier libraries already out
Oh,
there.
really?
Like I don't know, it's like called a hypnotic canvas shader library, where
Oh,
you get
really?
a shader background on your composable that's like a sort of hypnotic. And there was also another one from Chris Baines, I think,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
does
yeah.
that glassy background thing.
Oh, yeah. So that I mean, that's a very isn't that a very iOS kind of design,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
that's
so.
so people are already kind of creating libraries and functionality that can kind of bridge
Yes.
that design. I forgot about that. I'll have to try that as well because I know like a long time ago, this was ages ago, about 10 years ago. I remember doing an Android app and I was so frustrated because, like many times, the designer wanted the glass background
Yeah,
and
classic.
yeah,
Yeah.
classic, and I just could not figure out how. This was oh my, this is so long ago. It's like maybe 10 years ago. It was about 10 years ago. And I just couldn't figure out how to do it, with good performance. It ran terribly. And so finally I had to like I had to show them like how terrible it was to get
Yeah.
them to stop. But it's really great to see 10 years later that it's easier and Chris Baines does it. Thank you, Chris Baines.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I love that. It kind of like before, the libraries like that felt like maybe people weren't respecting Android and just wanting everything iOS, but it's cool to see it come around and that it's like more that we can leverage Kotlin multi-platform to actually do iOS and Android things. That's really cool.
Yeah, and get the user expectations handled
Yeah, yeah,
properly.
precisely. Just to
Yeah.
keep it, because I mean that's what is the most important thing, right? Is the user is able to use the app.
Yeah. And I'm quite so often in my development history, I had the moment where like Figma designs were there, and the back navigation was like mainly designed for iOS
Hmm.
always.
Yeah.
And I hope there's like a paradigm shift, because as I know, most users are doing Android in
In the world. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I know in the US we tend to be a little bit the public perception is skewed, but it is still the number one operating system. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, I really do hope so too. But we'll see what happens with multi-platform. But thank you, Mika, so much for speaking with me today.
Thank you.
If people wanted to find you on the internet, how can they do that?
Most easy is like on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm like, my internet name is all the time Felicia Faye. I
Great.
also have a like cute website. It's feliciafaye.com, where you see just some creative output of myself, like 3D stuff. And from, I think I wrote it with 3JS.
Oh,
Many,
really?
many years ago, but I still love my website, because if you hit the button saying noise,
Yeah, yeah.
the website starts dancing to some music. And it's a total anti-pattern, because of course, a website should not start music right away if you hit a button,
Right,
but
right, right.
it's more like a creative output.
Yeah.
And I plan to rewrite that with Kotlin, but I also need a 3D engine for it.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's a render JS already. There are also some rendering art for like doing artificial stuff
Yeah.
from Kotlin. Probably I combined it. there come.
That'd be cool. That'd be a really good experiment. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, Meike, for joining me. And like, yes, if you're interested in kind of like the Kotlin multi-platform experience, and especially with Jetpack Compose, you should check out Meike's talk because presumably you talk about a lot of kind of advanced techniques for kind of getting Compose wrangled together with KMP. But yeah, thank you so much, Meike.
Thank you.
And thank you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.